Hello, everybody. This is Hades. Today I am here with Final Terms and our physics expert Zappy.
Hello.
And today we are discussing the levitation and hoverboards topic because we do see that a lot in science fiction, and this is an anime of sci-fi. And in case you aren't familiar, hoverboards and hover technology can be seen in movies like Back to the Future with the hoverboard that Marty McFly flies on. You can see it in some of the Star Wars movies, like what was the
All of them.
fourth episode?
A New Hope. Come on, Fonzie. Damn it, this is the kind of thing I'd yell at Fonzie for. That's where I was going with that.
Whoopsie, sorry.
Can't mistake Star Wars stuff in front of me. Make me
Well,
angry.
okay, but when you
Sad.
see those, what you call them, the little cars, any vehicle that basically has frictionless, any vehicle that is frictionless way of like, it doesn't touch the ground when it moves. You can see that in
We
maglev
say
trains.
That it hovers.
Yeah, hoverboard, hence the name. So, yeah. So this is very recurring theme in a lot of sci-fi movies. So Zappy, our physics expert, what do you think about hoverboard technology? Do you think it's close to happening or what?
Alright, so there are two different kinds of hovering, I guess, that people generally talk about. One of them is the hoverboard, like from Back to the Future, which I don't think we're all that close to that. And the other one is things that are more specialized, like trains that, hover along rails. That I think would be a lot simpler to accomplish.
Well, yeah, because it has the convenience of having like a pre-laid track. Hoverboards obviously don't, at least in the depictions we've seen so far, do not need any specialist track. We see in the first episode of Star Wars, the gunships are just on top of the grass. Obviously, grass is not magnetic, at least I don't think it was in the movie. So, it's a little
Also,
less
notably
possible.
in A New Hope, the movie you mentioned goes across sand.
Yeah, so, we see already levitation, but it has to fulfill certain kind of condition. The terrain on which it hovers, it has to have special magnetic properties. Whereas in sci-fi, it just, whatever, if it's solid or roughly solid, you can hover above it.
Yeah, basically the problem right now is that we need not only a special set of conditions on the vehicle that's moving, but also on the ground that's hovering above. So this kind of general hovering anywhere we want is not really going to happen.
I see.
All right, so the question about the whole hovering is like you were saying with Star Wars, where they're hovering over grass. There's no magnetical pole or anything magnetical keeping it up, or any sort of magnet. And so, if it was
we should
air
point
current,
out that
if it was an air current, then it, like with the sand would be moving all over the place, and in the video it's not. Is there anything on that?
I mean, that's actually kind of what I was going to say, is that there are several different types of repulsion that aren't just magnetic. Air currents theoretically being one of them. The problem with something like an air current is that you need to eject essentially the vehicle's mass and exhaust every second. It requires a massive amount of material and energy that's unreasonable for most vehicles to carry around.
Right. Also, and I'll send a picture over here. If you look at that tattoo, not getting off topic from the hoverboards, but if you look at the Tatooine, the little car from The New Hope, you can see that there's a lot of empty space. Whereas if you see a hovercraft, there are those specialized cushions that limit the airflow just downwards so it doesn't spread out, limiting the amount of force needed for air currents to just lift up the whole vehicle.
Right. I think it's safe to say that that's not operating off of air currents.
Yeah, especially because there are certain factors like air pressure might change, so the fans have to adjust. Plus, if the atmosphere is thicker or lighter, depending on what sci-fi we're looking for, if we're still on Earth, it will be consistent. But otherwise, that might create some problems.
And we have to assume that the majority of these sci-fi places where we're seeing the hover vehicles, actually, we don't even have to assume. This is just a logical conclusion, is that since the people are there, presumably the conditions there are such that they could support human life.
Right.
So, and if those conditions are set, then we're still going to have problems with air density and whatnot.
Exactly, and another thing, like you often see people stepping off hoverboards or the hover vehicles. You don't see wind flying every which way. You see a helicopter, the amount of wind it has to produce in the surrounding area. Like you can tell just by looking at the ground around it, the helicopter's about to go because of the wind it generates. And you're talking like I don't know, 10,000 pound vehicle. Well, maybe not 10,000, but maybe 5,000 pound vehicle. You know that needs a lot of air current to be propelled. But there are other ways to produce levitation, which we can discuss about. Right now we got the you didn't want me to use the quantic levitation
Right.
definition.
Well, we can
What
just
was
call it superconducting magnets. It's a concept that people are familiar with, I think.
Right. For those not
And
familiar, for those not familiar, it's it can be found on quantumlevitation.com/the physics, and it will deeply explain. But for now, let's just Zappy try to explain to us in layman terms how this works exactly.
all right. Well, I think most people are familiar with the concept of superconducting. You have some sort of substance that you supercool, and then when you supercool it, it has no resistance, which in practice means that you can put an electric current in it and basically turn it into a permanent magnet. That's layman's terms. Not explaining why it makes it a magnet or anything.
And the scientific mumbo jumbo for that would be
Well, when you have an electric current running in a circle, like it would be in really anything that you put an electric current into, it generates a magnetic field as well. That's why we have the force of electromagnetism, for example. That's why we call it that, is because it's the two things in one. But normally in most substances, when you do this, the internal resistance is enough that it knocks out the electric current relatively quickly, and you don't really see a magnetic field. But in a superconductor, there is very little resistance, so you don't really have to worry about that.
right. So finally understood any of that.
Yeah, is that anything close to like how the sound wave levitation works?
No, not really at all. Something with a magnet is one of these things where it has to have a special track underneath it, because you put a magnet in the vehicle and then a magnet in the track. And the magnets, I mean, I'm sure everybody had, well, at least I had two magnets that you put next to each other, and you push the one along with the other one. And this used to drive me crazy as a little kid, just pushing the magnet around. And
yeah, we all had fun with that, magnetics and all that.
And it's basically the same idea. That's why maglev trains are, I don't know if they're still kind of a big deal, but I mean, they would, I don't know, people like them because they would be a very efficient method of transportation.
Yeah, but the problem with magnets is that, it has to retain certain properties. When you look at the hoverboard from Marty McFly, it's all purpose. Sand, gravel, anything, it just levitates off of it. So there's a lot of tolerance over which material the hoverboard can hover over. I do recall in a movie he fell into the water.
Yeah, when he went over water, he fell into water.
Right, so there's some.
Well, no.
property
The
of water
board
there.
stayed above water, notably.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So we're discounting that.
Which is actually one of the more reasonable places for one of those things to hover. Like, there are two conditions for a magnetic levitation thing to work at. One is it has to be cold enough for the superconductor to stay a superconductor, because if it goes above a certain temperature threshold, it won't work anymore. And two, it has to be above something that's producing magnetic field. Now, I say water is one of the more reasonable places, just because water molecules are pretty polar. And if you, we did this experiment years ago in like one of my high school chemistry classes, where you take a strong magnet or something and you put it next to a beam of falling water, right, like out of a sink.
Oh, like with the balloon.
Will bend, right, and it will bend towards or away because the molecules are really polar, so they will twist to align themselves to the magnet.
Okay, so those are the two conditions I see. Let's assume that they found a way to just eliminate those two conditions, like, why does the superconductor have to be that cold, like negative 270 Kelvin? I think it was something like that, or
Well, that's
not
pretty close
Kelvin,
to
Fahrenheit,
absolute
Fahrenheit. Yeah, Fahrenheit, I think. And the other one it has to be over something magnetic. So what would be the possible ways of, well, like, one, why does it have to be that to begin with? Why those properties are essential, and how can we just like bypass that in a way?
Well, it has to be that cold because superconducting only works at really, really cold temperatures. Um, I'm now as to why that is, if you can figure that out definitively, there's a Nobel Prize waiting for you, I think.
Oh, okay, so we don't know. Damn it.
Right. Well, we
Whoops.
do know some things about it. We do know that there's like a superconductor. They could call it critical temperature. People who work with this. There's a critical temperature for a lot of substances that once it hits this temperature, boom, suddenly superconducting. And it's different for every substance. So
Wait, hold on.
I think
You say that
Go ahead.
it has to be cooled and boom suddenly. I've heard about how they produce a magnet. It has to be like every atom has to be aligned in a certain way to allow the magnetic field to pass through. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
roughly.
So, could it be that well, heat is just vibration of atoms and molecules. So maybe we just need to find a way to just maybe prevent atoms from rearranging themselves, or just keep them arranged in a certain way so they
Well, the way to
can.
stop them from rearranging themselves is to get them really cold.
Yeah, could there be another way to do that? Maybe? No, please.
Um, I mean, if you think you can demonstrate that there is one, again, I've got a Nobel Prize waiting for you.
turn
It's just
turn
in
it
your front.
turn it somehow into a solid, just magically.
Well, it is
Water and
even
cold.
Well, yeah,
solids
they
vibrate.
generally are solids to begin with.
Yeah, like
Because
even if you hold out
if
a
it's
rock.
that cold, it's got to be a solid.
Yeah, I mean, even
Um,
if you hold out the rock in your hand, you think it's stationary, like the molecules are moving, but you zoom in really close with an electron microscope, you can see they are lightly vibrating still. They're still moving around. You just don't see it because they're too damn small.
Right, and there are tons of people researching trying to bring that critical temperature that I talked about up higher and higher and higher. And if it gets to a point where it is, they find like some sort of compound that's a superconductor at room temperature, then that'll have a major impact on our daily lives. Everything from your computers to your cars will be completely overhauled. It would be a big deal. And yes, you could use that for a hoverboard, provided you're willing to go along the sanctioned sidewalks that have been turned into hoverboard accessible sidewalks.
Yeah, the material we've seen so far on the YouTube videos was a sapphire crystal mixed with something else, some kind of a sapphire related compound. Or like, not sapphire is not an element, but you get what I'm trying to say. So if we find another kind of combination of elements and compounds that could do that, yeah, I can definitely see that working out. But there's a second condition which you mentioned, is that the surface beneath the quote hoverboard would have to be magnetic as well. Is there like natural magnetism in common surfaces?
Well, I mean, the way you touch things every day is the electromagnetic interaction. But because I'm just saying this because this is what everybody always tells me when we start with this part of the discussion. Um, the way you touch things is through electromagnetic interaction. So they say, why couldn't we just extend that a little bit longer and use that to hover with? And the answer to that is, if you have a magnetic field that large that it will hover above the ground, it will also repel you off the top of it. So
So it'd have to be like a very highly magnetized planet, or
yeah, a magnetic planet.
How would we use like the whole sound wave concepts for like
Oh, yeah, we
data
haven't talked
type
about
and stuff
that.
like that?
All right, so that's a little more versatile than electromagnetic levitation. What you're looking at with that is, once again, you need a flat surface.
that's it.
So you need a flat surface instead of a magnetic surface.
Why does it need to be flat?
Because the way you do it is by creating a resonance wave, which is a big word.
Can I take a wild stab at why that is?
Sure.
Okay, so have any of you seen like a completely soundproof room? How the walls look?
Yeah,
And
with all the
yeah, like it's not flat at all. It is anything but flat. It's just like angles every which way. So that absorbs sound waves, right?
well, there are materials that absorb sound waves, and that's generally also what the walls are made of. But the point of the spikes, I'll call them, random angles and whatnot, is to reflect the sound waves in different directions, specifically to prevent something like resonance.
So the reason why you need the
Um,
flat surface is so the sound waves come back at the perpendicular angle straight back to the
right.
hoverboard and repel it. So
Basically, to have a resonance wave, well, not okay. I'll answer this in two parts. To have a resonance wave, you need to shoot your sound wave at something, and then it needs to bounce back and have all the nodes hit at the same spots.
notes.
Nodes in the wave. Um, like you know how a wave goes up and down. Every time it passes through the middle section, that's a node. So if you have a standing wave, you get nodes. Okay, so you produce a resonance wave between two places. You'll get nodes where it's the wave is at the same spot every time, and on the other parts it will be fluctuating up and down. But at the nodes it'll always be in the same spot.
Right. So you just need like a certain. You want as big of a percentage of the sound waves coming back to the source in a way as possible.
Right.
So you need as flat of a surface. Whereas if you have gravel or things like that, it will just it might come down straight down from the hoverboard, but it will come back at a 45-degree
bounce
angle
all
and
over
miss
the
it
place.
entirely.
So
Yeah.
that way it's like between the two, and it's actually hovering and not just suspended in air.
Yeah, it's kind of like a ping pong ball with a paddle. You just want to come back straight to the paddle, like ping, go up and down, rather than the ping pong ball going down and then going to the left when it's coming up and missing the paddle entirely.
I should
But-
point out
yeah.
also really quickly that this is a different method of levitation than, say, the electromagnetic. You're not just shooting it at the ground, bouncing it back up, and then you magically float. What you need to do is you need to trap yourself in between two nodes. So you would need actually a projector. You'd need like a noise projector above you and a flat surface below you, or noise projectors on both sides. So there is still a bit more of this restricted areas where you can go, because you can't exactly carry around that noisy thing with you.
Yeah,
At least
I
not
mean,
that I know of.
unless it, well, I mean, the example we had recently with the three-dimensional meta acoustic manipulation, Jesus, that's a long term. Final term. Heyo. It is very inefficient because it has you have like giant speakers that are maybe a foot across from all sides, and all they can do is levitate at most, like maybe have a wooden matchstick. So they'll have to come up with some better speakers. However, it is not loud. It is loud technically, but it is in frequencies that are not heard. So just because it is
Not heard by you.
yeah, by us. I mean, maybe
you're gonna have
for
some
dogs.
very angry dogs. Yeah.
Or cats or
Sensitive
whatever.
prick.
Yeah. Well, like no hoverboards. This is a dog park. We will see those signs soon, hopefully. So yeah, there's a lot of science that can be applied to the hoverboard. It's not like, well, hoverboard and levitation in general. It's not like product magic. Sorry.
So do you think there'd be any way for us to implement this right now?
Well, let me just ask you. Do you think, like 200 or however long time ago, people thought, oh, they would never discover other worlds, or they would never exactly measure out the entire planet. It's infinite. You go back 100 years, the
200
ideas they
years
had
ago,
back then.
they knew what the size of the universe was.
Well,
And about other planets in the
approximately.
solar system.
I don't. Oh,
Those are
Sorry.
very bad examples.
jeez, got a better one. Come on, enlighten us with
Yeah,
some
the
science.
internet.
Ooh. Well, okay. Let's go back to 1700s. Do you think people would think that there would be those machines where you can play games, put YouTube movies and etc., and have them all interconnected within seconds? Nope. So maybe it's just beyond our spectrum for now.
Yeah, I mean maybe.
All right. So, hoverboard is an interesting concept. Any final words about that? Because I'm out of ideas.
I mean, if you can find a way to make one work, I'm sure you can make yourself a lot of money. That said, if I knew how to make one work, I'd have a lot of money.
Well, that's a
Well,
given.
that, and you'd also have to find a way to make it cheap enough, especially in this economy right now.
Well,
Like,
automobile wasn't
you'd
cheap
have
when
to
it
make
came
it
out.
cheap enough, and you'd have to be able to mass produce it, and you'd have to. I mean, there's a lot of obstacles. But even if you could just get the theory down, you'd be pretty rich, I think.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at the history just real quick. Automobile or whatever, whatever it was called back then. You know, at first it was just for rich people. Then because it got all the funding, it started to be mass produced. And then, hello, a 20-year-old guy like me can have a car now. So maybe down the line, who knows? If you're looking forward to hoverboard, then you're young. Perhaps maybe if you're in your 40s, well, if you're in your 30s, you'll see rich people. Then in 40s or 50s, you can get one of your own. So
Buy
keep
your
those
kid.
fingers crossed. Yep. And I think that would be it for now. So to our audience, stay tuned and stay hopeful because the hoverboard might just arrive at your house. So I'm Hades.
Final terms.
Zappy. You should know me by now.
Yeah, whatever. And
An ego to me.
stay tuned for the next episode. Take care.